Yeah, my name is Chris. For any of you who don't know who I am, my name is Chris. My wife is Nicia, and she is not here for some reason. But yeah, so that's what she's doing. She's repping EnterMission. We went to college with Kevin and Denise. I grew up with Kevin. We went on our first dates together, double date. And they were our forwarding agents. They came to this church when we were young, and our first major purchase as missionaries was a fax machine. We spent like $600, which was so much for us, for this ginormous fax machine they had. And we moved to Ecuador in South America. And once a month, one Saturday a month, we didn't have a phone. So we go to a friend's house who had a fax machine, and we would turn it on. They would hook up their fax machine, and we'd fax them something, and they'd fax us something back. That was the state of affairs when we left the United States. And so we worked for like 18 years in South America as church planters, starting churches. And there's my wife walking through the door. And during that time, we had 4 children and various animals that did not survive. All of our children did survive, and they are all adults. Our oldest is married and works in what's called live production, and I'm not even going to bother explaining what that is. Joshua, my second born, does the same type of work. My third born, Daniel, he actually married a girl he met in Spain, because after 18 years in South America, we moved to Europe and began church planting in Spain. He met a girl when they were like 12 and 13 at a church. And when he was in college here in the States, he returned to Spain, and they connected again and started dating long distance for 4 years. And they just got married, and he actually continues as a missionary on our team in Spain. And that's our third born. And then our girl is at University of Kentucky in her second year there. So that's kind of our family update. And let me get rid of my gum. Thank you. Sorry about that. So we're here to share a little bit this morning just about what it is we do. You guys support us. You guys are one of the first churches that came on board. You supported us when we worked in Ecuador. We were your missionaries. Over the years, you've increased your support to a substantial amount. When we moved to Europe, you guys were still on board. I remember, sharing how we were going to Spain and how one lady, not at this church, said, "Why would I want to send you money to go where I dream of going for vacation?" Because you hear Spain, I'd love to go to Spain. Yeah, Spain is a great place to visit. It's an extremely difficult place if you're going there to talk about faith. In 10 years there, now don't think we didn't do anything and you wasted your money. In 10 years there, we saw 2 baptisms. Praise God for the 2, right? 2 baptisms. And a unique thing happened while we were there, because we came from South America where we saw several churches started, and several of those churches started churches. And one of the churches that had this horrible thing happen in their life in Ecuador actually spawned more churches, because several of our leaders went out and just started their own churches, And so we've even seen church growth that way, but we felt pretty confident, like, I could move anywhere, and this is what we did in Ecuador. Our team would say, "We want a church there. Nicia and Chris, move there." And we would move there, and we would make connections with people, and we group people together, and then we would pick another neighborhood to move, and we would just do that. We did that like 3 different times, and it was wonderful. And then I moved to Spain, and none of my tools worked. You know how when you become proficient at something, you feel like, yeah, I got this. Like, I know how to do this, right? I've tried, since we now own our first home ever. I'm not a handyman. And Nicia really wants me to be a handyman. And so we framed up walls, we've done drywall, and at the end she's like, isn't the sense of satisfaction just, and I'm like, no, Like sense of accomplishment is here, level of frustration is here, because all I'm doing is running to the hardware store to buy more things to correct my mistakes. But I will acknowledge most of those mistakes are mistakes I'm only going to make one time. Because as you do things, you realize and you learn. And, I tried to replace plumbing things, and then I cut off the water to our house, and I realized I'd used shark bites that are one way, and I'd put them in the wrong way. Like, I'll never do that again. But it was a frustrating day. 3 trips to Home Depot. I'm tall. I'm in a tiny space. I was not a happy camper. So we get to Europe, and we're doing what we've always done. Like, I've got small group studies. That we can do small group stuff. I have one-on-one things. I have the stories I tell to people who don't know God. I have all of this. I have all this stuff. If you're willing to come, man, I am the person. If you want to know about God, come see me. The question is, in Europe, most people aren't interested in coming. And when I was here a couple years ago, one of the questions I asked was this. I said, what does a church do when no matter what you do anymore fails to get people to come? Think about that. Think about over the years. We talked about this. See, I remember 2 years ago when I was here, I looked up exactly what I shared. And I shared this. Like, remember over the years, like at first churches back when I was a kid, the pastors would visit members in their homes, or they would send leaders out, or they would go door to door, right? Then you had street preaching that was out. Then you had passing out tracts. There was a bus ministry that would come through neighborhoods and pick up kids. As I was talking about this, somebody from Dallas said in our area, we had what was called the magic candy bus that would drive through neighborhoods and invite kids on with the promise of candy. They would take them to church and then on their way home, give them candy. And I'm like, that is just so wrong. So many levels, right? But they did that. And then it was, well, let's build a community center and a gym. If we have that, people will come. And then if we get the lights and contemporary music, and now it's all the way down to pastors with skinny jeans and long beards that are really hip, we do all these things, and I'm not even critical of those things. We can laugh at them. I'm not critical of them. Because in the end, we want people to come and know about God. And if that's what's going to do it, man, we'll do it. Because what's important to us is that you come. But I moved to Europe where they're past that. They hit something culturally where they said, we've been there, we've done that, we're not interested. And so no matter what these giant churches, and if you've ever been to Europe and you've gone to the cathedrals and the giant churches, nobody goes. They've already been there and done that. So we have all this stuff as a church, and we're trying all these ways to get people to come, but what we're realizing slowly is, yeah, that ship has sailed. And we actually have to go. And we have no clue how to go. Like, what does my faith mean outside the walls of this church? And so we had to learn, because I realized I don't even know how to engage in small talk with people. I'm very awkward. Socially, I'm good at this. Like, if you want me to teach, I'm a teacher. Preach, I'm a preacher. Small group leader, I'll do it. Like, I can get up in front of any group, no nerves, like this is me. But try and have a conversation with me if we don't know each other. I really don't want to have that conversation for the most part. I feel very awkward. I don't know what to talk about. I like small talk. I've always hated small talk. I'm the one I'll start to talk with you, and then I'll just throw a deep question because I want to go deep. Let's at least, if we have to talk, let's talk about something that I think means something, right? And then I learned in Europe, that's not healthy. Like, if you can't talk about the small things with people, how do you ever expect to talk about the big things? And I realized I'm not good at that. And so over 10 years, we began to learn a different way of being. Because it doesn't mean they're not spiritual or they don't have spiritual interests. People will always be spiritual. We're created that way. People will always. We can say, oh, this culture, they don't want God. No, they're just as spiritual as any other culture. They're just not interested in church in Europe. And coming and already present in the States. As more and more churches, mid-size and below, are struggling to figure out how do we connect. Like, we're trying everything. We've tried this book, we've tried that course, we've tried this, and we're just seeing diminishing returns. Like, what in the world is happening? I can tell you what's happening is the U.S. has followed Europe. It's a post-secular world where they've already been there and done that. But it doesn't mean they're not spiritual. It does mean that we, who are really good, if people come, we have to readjust how we are. And one of the truths that's been discovered is, in the past, we said, come and believe to belong. You need to believe to belong. This younger generation is tired of just talking about things. And so the message that churches are starting to learn is, man, we have to help people belong in order to believe. Because people are isolated, they're struggling. We have to get people to belong to something. And what that means is, for many churches, is finding out, okay, it's not about what we provide when people come here. It's how do we impact a culture. We already know culture's not going to be for us. We already know that most people aren't going to be interested. But we want to be known in our culture. In our culture, we want everybody to know who we are and what character what we represent, even if they don't agree or don't want to live it. And so we need to be out in culture. We need to make sure in our towns they know what this church represents, because this church is intricately weaved in to what this town is doing. This church is out there doing things. And so over 10 years, we learned a new way of being. And some of our catchphrases were, we learned to treat people as people and not projects. It's not about the project or the program. It's seeing people as people. It's learning, how do you even talk to somebody? Some of you are really gifted at it. If you're in sales or you just know you're easy going with people. And I have some friends that they can talk to anybody. And it's just so normal. For me, I just get super anxious, And so we learned, how do you talk to people? How do you ask questions? Because the new way you express love is by seeing people, And so we had to learn as a team, how do we see people? When we meet with somebody, in the past, I would meet somebody for coffee, and as I'm talking to them, I'm just praying, oh, Holy Spirit, give me the words to say the right thing. I need to fit God in to evangelize. In the end, I told our team, stop evangelizing. They can smell that out a mile away. Like, that's a bait and switch. They already know you're weird. They think we're part of a cult in Spain. They're like, oh, you're that cult guy, like the Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons. So they're just ready. But what I found is, when we just stop that and we just really focused on asking them questions and learning about their lives, at some point they're going to ask me. And at some point, God's going to come out, because that's who I am. And the first time God comes out, I'll stop and say, hey, I know this is really weird. And, for you may never met somebody like me, but God is very real in my life. It's not just a religious thing. Like, I take it very seriously. He's part of everything I am, everything I do. And so that's going to come out. And I've had so many times, Nicia and they'll say, look at the hairs on they're all standing up. Like, that's cool, you be you. Now, again, they're not interested, but and so then from then on, I can share whatever I want. I don't have to ask, where do I fit God in? He just is naturally there. And it was a much more honest way of interacting with people. And one of the things we learned to do is ask this question. And we challenge our students with EnterMission about this. We make a list of everybody we know. It's called the list of 100. Start down with all your family members, and you write down that you have a relationship with. You write all those people down. Now, all your friends, you write them all down. All the people you go to church with that you relate to. Like, you may be in church with them, but you really don't talk to this person. Okay, don't write them down. But everybody else. Then your neighbors, co-workers, people you see every week, but you don't know their names, where you buy gas or where you write all those people down. And then you try and identify, do you know if they're a Christian or not? And then you work off of that list over the next year. How am I being an influence in their lives? And one of the things we set out to do is, those that aren't Christians, that you think aren't Christians in their lives, at some point, ask them this question. Hey, I was thinking about you this week. I don't know why. I've been thinking about this question, and I just decided I ask you. We've never talked about it. Has there ever been a time in your life where God seemed very real? It's the best question you can ever ask somebody. Before you try and start telling them about Jesus and telling them the right way and trying to sell them or use apologetics for certain arguments, take time and just ask them that. Because here's the thing, it doesn't matter where they are, I guarantee you. Even your most diehard atheist will probably say, man, there was this one time. We send our students out to do that at the University of Tennessee's campus, just a survey. And one of the questions of the 4 questions is, has there ever been a time when God seemed very real? And man, the stories you hear. It's amazing what God does in the people's lives that you think have no interest in God. And it just opens real dialogue. So over a course of time in Europe, as hard as it was, like Daniel, my son, their team has seen results now. Praise God. Like they had like 16 baptisms in a year, right? And they're training people all over the world. They trained over 170 some people last year in different parts of the world. They saw 9 church planting teams form in different parts of like they've just 10 years of us not seen much of anything except forming a team and trying to reach out. And you guys brought a group over and helped us with English camp in our town. But we didn't see those results, but the team now is, right? But we learned a way of being. And then we decided, man, missionaries need to learn this because this is the world that's coming. Like you better know how to cross cultures with people. You better know how to not just be with a bunch of white people. Your children need to know how to interact and interact well in their faith with people of different races and religions and genders and sexuality. You need to know how am I to be in that. And so we decided we're going to start a school. And when I was here last time, I told you, we're going to start a school for missionaries that's 10 months. And I'm doing it with a missionary in England because we want missionaries, before they go to their field, they would come to England, to the city of Birmingham, which is called Little Pakistan, because of all the Muslims, all the Indians, all the Senegalese. They have like over 102 people groups that live in this city. You don't walk at night, like it's very dangerous. So don't think Downton Abbey. And so we were coming here, we started this 10-month training school to train missionaries on how to do this. And then right when we were coming back to pitch it to you guys, to say, okay, we're moving countries. Now we're going out of church planting. We're going to train missionaries in this 10-month school we launched. For 2 years, I went up every other month to England to get the school started. Right when we're going to do this, we shared with you last time, we came home and my mom and stepdad have Alzheimer's, both of them. And we realized we couldn't go back to the field. And my stepdad passed away, and we're trying to figure out, what do we do with our lives? Like I'd resigned as a team leader. We had a large team in Spain. I had resigned. They were waiting for us to arrive in England to run this school, which is still going, and I praise God for that. And suddenly the rug was pulled out from under us because my mom is still mom. It's not like I wouldn't have a problem finding a place for her if she didn't know who we were and didn't have normal conversations, but she couldn't live by herself. And then within literally a week of saying, what do we do? Like, what am I going to do? The International Conference on Missions contacted me. And, or somebody else, Andrew Jett, a missions minister, contacted me and said, I'm on the board of this new thing called EnterMission. It's for young adults. It's a 10-month school that ICOM wants to start. And Johnson University is saying, hey, we want to partner with you guys with this because what we're finding is students are either not prepared for college when they get here, or after they've sat for 4 years in classes, they have no relational skills. They haven't developed the actual hands-on skills. Like they know how to think. And we want to partner with you. And they said, but we don't have anything else. Like we don't have curriculum. It's a 10-month gap year, program. Would you want to do it? And I thought, well, we just started a 10-month training school for missionaries. We'd be interested. And they said, well, you'd have to move to Knoxville. Well, that's where 3 of our 4 kids were, right? And before you know it, we're the directors of EnterMission, and they say, well, what would it take? Like, what would you need to make? And I've not lived here for 30 years, so I made the mistake of Googling middle-class income in Tennessee. And I put, well, this is it, this number. And they say, you're hired. Now, we don't actually have money, That actually happened. After they hired us, we don't actually have money. Would your churches be willing to step up and continue supporting you? And I was very honest. I said, I don't think so. I think some of them will. But I think some of them will say, wait, you're not on the mission field anymore? You're not, it still says EnterMission, and in my mind, that's what we're doing. We're just teaching everybody. And it's not just for those who want to be missionaries. Our name actually has become kind of a downfall because so many young people hear EnterMission and they're like, oh, I'm not interested in being a missionary. It's not that. It's entering life on mission. Whatever you do, whatever your vocation, we will teach you skills to live out your faith beyond the walls of the church. You don't want to just believe. Like you want to live with purpose. You want to know that whatever you're doing, God is in it, and we can teach you how to do that. And so they hired us, and our first year, we had 10 students sign up, which we needed a minimum of 8 to make this thing financially viable. And then Corona hit. And by the time we started, we had 4. And it was down to, we're going to lose thousands upon thousands of dollars. But these 4 students had done everything we asked them to do. They had praised. For this 10 months, you have to raise $12,000, almost $13,000. They had done it. And we said, we are not going to just tell them, sorry, we don't have enough people. So we ran it, and their lives were transformed. They really were. They were transformed. And then this year, we had 7 students. And now this coming year, we hope to have just as many. As of right now, we do not. We offer an apprenticeship where we select 2 people who are older. So EnterMission is from 17 to 25 years of age. It's not just those right out of high school. Some of our people are out of college or they were just in the workforce and they decided, I'm going to work the rest of my life. I'm willing to take a year, But we also offer just a 1-semester experience. So let me say this, and then I want to invite Nicia to come up. Here's what EnterMission is. We are a gap year program. For those who are 17 to 25 years of age, where we say, if you're between those ages and you want to identify your giftedness, learn who you are, who God is, and what He's going to do in your life, and to strengthen your skills, we will provide the teaching and the practice. We are a trade school approach. Even our teaching isn't your typical sit down and do this course and take these notes. It's all practical. And you actually are taught to do it. Most of the people who join us, I would say over half, struggle with social anxiety. Well, by the end of this time with us, it's amazing to watch them. We watched our 7 young adults walk into churches filled with 40 to 50 young adults, college age. They have no issue. They walk up, sit down at a table, and we don't even have to tell them. Like when they learn, I can talk to anybody at any time. And I don't even have to be the one doing all the talking. I can just ask questions and then be attentive to what I think God might be saying, So it's a tremendous opportunity. So they spend 2 months, we prep them at Johnson, 2.5 months. And then they go on the road, an epic road trip where they travel all around the United States together and they work with delinquent youth at a children's ranch in South Dakota, Native American Indians, in Arizona, do some work either in Vegas or the inner city last year in Cincinnati with block ministries, work in orphanages, children's home. They have all of these diverse experiences for 2.5 months. And then that's semester 1. Semester 2, we divide them into a smaller team and they go overseas for 4.5 months. So it's a 10-month time. It's a gap year, but it's not taking a year off. It's totally, if you're living at home, you leave mom and dad. But you don't have the stress of the homework or trying to figure out a career. You just get to grow in community with others. Everybody in our community is a learner, including me, even our teachers. We all come saying, we're a learning community, And then we provide individual mentoring. So every person in our program, whether you're an apprentice or helping as a leader or a participant, you're individually mentored every week, where your mentor will privately just assess what's going on in your heart. What is God saying? Here's what we're seeing. We don't like this. Like, what's going on here? Or we think you're doing great in this area. What is God saying to you during this whole time? Because young adults are dying to be seen. They're dying to be heard. And their motto, if you ask half of our students our first 2 years, I think when they come to us, all of them are believers. Within the first month, over half, I would say, struggle with, do I even really believe? That's their greatest fear, is that they might not actually believe. And their verse is, I believe, Lord, help my unbelief. Because they want to believe, and they said they believed, and their family believes, and there's so much pressure to not let down their family and their tradition, but they're looking at themselves and saying, I have no idea what my faith really means. Like, I don't have the answers to all these problems in the world. And the church has been so good at talking about what we stand against. We haven't really taught what we stand for. We haven't taught what it means to love people who don't love us, to accept people who don't accept us, to be gracious but not sacrifice truth in our relationships. We haven't really been great at that as a church. And so what we say to people is we don't have all the answers either. But we do feel like some of what we learned in Europe, that we started to train missionaries, this is what young people are dying to do. And Johnson says, if you haven't gone to college, we'll give you up to semester college credit if you do this. All right? So that is what it is. And we invite college grads or those who are over a certain age, like 21 to 35, hey, if you want to come and be an apprentice with us, we'll take, right now it's 2 per year, And Tori had no idea. She reached out. I didn't remember who Tori was at all. I got this email from a student at Liberty saying, could we talk? I'm just questioning my next steps. And immediately I was like, apprentice maybe? God, is this what's going on? So we had an interview, and she just talked about what advice I give, and I gave her some advice. I said, by the way, there's this EnterMission thing, and I'll send you an apprentice packet. And I sent it and didn't hear anything. And then I casually, like a month later, wrote Kevin and said, hey, we're going to be coming up to Alexandria. By the way, Victoria Strong wrote us, and I was trying to get Kevin to kind of put a bug in her ear, like, hey, there's this apprenticeship. And he says, oh yeah, we talked to her and she's probably going to apply. And so whether she thought it or not, I believe God orchestrated that. And so you're going to have one of your very own. What we do to our apprentices is we have a structured leadership approach where you come in just like a student, and you'll be like an RA in phase 1. In phase 2, you assume more leadership. And when you go overseas, you're in charge of your group. And we mentor you during that whole thing. And so for them, what we do is we say you need to raise $7,000 plus your international travel. That's half the cost. So she's actually not getting paid to be an intern. She's paying, but it basically covers her cost. And so we're really excited that she is one of the 2 that we will have this year with us. And we're excited for you as a church to be part of this. If any of you, and Nicia, if you guys would come forward real quick, if any of you want information about this, we have information on our booths that you can pick up that talk about why a gap year, what are you waiting for, say yes to a gap year and a changed life. But what we really need are mobilizers. If you are a homeschool mom or within that community, we just need people to know there's not one route when they get out of high school or even college. It's not either college or work, right? There is a third route. Take a year of your life, come and join us. And we guarantee that you will come out a changed person, and you will be able to walk into whatever situation you go in so much more confident, so much more secure. And we actually have packets that if you're a teacher in a high school, then by all means come up, and I have these folders here that has several brochures. Just let your guidance counselors know, let churches know this is a new option. Our Bible colleges, again, tend to produce people who can think very well, but it's just not the environment for practical hands-on skills. So lots of bigger churches don't even want Bible college graduates. They're like, we'll make our own leaders, right? Because you don't know what you're getting. And I actually believe that you're going to see more of these gap year programs, pop up. And if you ask, well, are you missions? I would say we're a blend. We're education. We're education and missions. So if you used to support Cincinnati Bible College and you're wondering, why is this missions EnterMission if it's working with young adults? Well, then consider it Christian education. It's the new leadership training, and that's kind of our approach. And so I'll let Nicia share, one of her big roles, and then we'll give Tori a moment to speak as well. So, I'll take my gun back.
I'm glad he took that. I was looking at it, I was like, okay. One of my biggest roles in EnterMission is actually just kind of being the mom of the group right now. So I take care of a lot of their just like food and just logistics of that kind of thing. So that's just something I'm gifted at, and it's easy and I enjoy it, hospitable and all that. So that's just kind of something I've stepped into. But the main thing that I do that really has given me life after being on the mission field for so long, and I was talking to a few people how difficult it was specifically for me. I think Chris was ready to come back from the mission field to the United States, but for me personally, it was very, very, very difficult. That's where I've always been as a child. I grew up on the mission field, went to Bible college, and then back to the mission field. So I feel more at home in a foreign country or with people from other nations for whatever reason. And so finally, I feel like I have a role to play, and it's given me personally new life. So I am a mentor to the girls on the team, and as we grow, we'll probably have to have another mentor because it takes a lot of time that's well spent, but it's once a week. I talk to the girls, and it's just us, or just me and the one girl, and I do one session with them every week, and basically I just allow the Holy Spirit to bring things to my head. And so many times I'm just like, why did I ask that question, or why did I come up with that? And I know it's God, because it's definitely not me and my wisdom. And so it's life-changing for me, and allowing just me to see how God's using me, and then life-changing for them to just speak into their lives and see truth and speak God's truth to them. So it's a really cool experience for me. It's a little selfish, but it's not on the same side. So, but the other big thing that I lead is called life mapping. And once a week for the first 8 weeks that we're at Johnson campus how many of you have heard of life mapping? Nobody? Oh, well, I could do it here. Anyway, it's these 8 maps that we do, and it basically, the first map is just, where am I now? What am I doing? What gives me life? And you have to answer all these guided questions, and it's a very personal time, and so anyway, you do that, and then you do a life map of just your general timeline of your life. And those of us that are, they have one for every 10 years. So those of us that are a little older, you need like 5 or 6 maps, because 10 years you map out your life, where you saw God in those different places. And it's a very guided time. Then you do your highs, what gives you joy, where do you find life, basically. And then your 4th week, and the students are sharing. They're supposed to spend a couple hours every week doing this on their own in prayer. And as they look at their lives and they see these different aspects of their lives, they're really growing. It's really amazing. And they're growing as a group too. And then the 4th week is their lows. And that's one of the hardest weeks we ever have to do, because these students have some really deep hurts. And it's hard to hear what they've gone through. And they obviously share what they're comfortable with. Some of them have such deep hurts they don't want to share that in public. Some of them have, and it's just heart-wrenching. That day we share our hurts. I think this year it was like 4 hours. We all had migraines because it was just, you're just weeping with them and feeling, but it bonds your group. Don't freak out. It really is a good experience. But and then we also deal it within the personal mentoring. We're also talking about it more and more, and just helping people heal. And our main theme for this part of our program is allowing God to redeem your story. Not allowing your story to define you and change the trajectory of your life necessarily, but allowing God to redeem your story so you in turn can use that to help others. And there are 4 other maps, but those deal more with the future. They're not quite as heart-wrenching. How you're going to continue life-giving things. And they're impacting, but not quite as impacting as week 4. But it's just very amazing to watch these life maps being used. And so, yeah, it's a pretty cool experience. So I want to introduce Tori. I'm sure you don't know her. This is Tori. Anyway, so Tori, I want you to tell us why you would like to do intermission, or why you've decided to do intermission, and kind of maybe since you've heard some of us. We're not giving her a lot of details just because we want her to experience, especially that first 8 to 9 weeks as more of a student. So she doesn't come in with a lot of preconceived ideas. So anyway, why did you decide to do intermission, and what are you hoping to get out of it in the next 10 months?
Yeah. Okay.
Gotta use the mic.
Yeah. Well, I graduated college and kind of didn't know what was next. I spent 3.5 years in Lynchburg at Liberty University, so a Christian university, and I was studying full-time ministry. I wanted to go into full-time ministry. I just didn't know exactly what path that looked like, whether it was missions or whether it was church work. And I was just still trying to figure that out. And I was looking at missions with Greater Europe Mission, which I previously was affiliated with, about to do a summer program, and COVID hit, and so I didn't ever do that. But yeah, I was looking at going back with them and doing full-time mission work, and then I realized I had no clue how to do full-time mission work at all, and so I called Chris, as he mentioned, and I was like, hey, I just have some questions about support raising, because I do have student loans to pay and stuff like that, and so I was just curious of what that looked like, especially in Europe, since they served in Spain for so long. And so, yeah, he told me about EnterMission, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. And he also told me about the school in Birmingham, so I was also considering that, but I didn't look so much into that because I know people on the U.S. side. So that's kind of what got me interested, and I, from there, kept doing research and praying about it and applied, and then they were like, you want to be our apprentice? And I was like, sure. So this was all like that last week that we decided this. So it's very new to me, but like they said, I don't really know what's coming. But I'm excited to find out. So yeah, I think I'm looking to just learn how to serve others well and do it on that personal level and engage with people from different cultures, which I don't have much experience with. So I think that's, yeah.
Great, thank you. Besides our brochures, if you want to find out more, just go to EnterMission.org, and we have everything on our website that is there. As a matter of fact, there is a donate button, and if you click donate, it'll take you to a page where you can, as you fill in your information, you select a student, and Tori's name is there. So, right, we have another Tori in this year's group, but she's an apprentice with us, but she's listed as a student. So everybody who gets support is, even our staff. So you can choose to give her a gift to help her in her fundraising, and you can make that a recurring donation, or you can give a one-time gift, whatever you want. It is tax deductible and receivable through ICOM. So when you hit that donate, it'll take you to ICOM's address, but the money gets to EnterMission and what we do. And I just want you guys to know, it would be my goal. There would give me no greater pleasure than to say, hey, Church of Christ of Alexandria, you've supported us for 30 years. Thanks. We don't need it any longer. In fact, when we launched, my goal was 3 years that we would be self-sustaining. Then COVID hit, and it just wiped us out. You know, thankfully, the government came through with a PPP because we were like $46,000 in debt after our first year, and the government PPP took half of that. This year, we had 7 students, and so it was just a little bit more debt added onto that. So what I am saying is my goal is still, as this program grows, we actually have colleges in different parts of the country saying, could you do this in our college? You know, we want to do this. We actually see this growing to where we're having 2 or 3 across the country running, which is a whole different level of things. But we want this to be self-sustaining. We don't want this to be something that, of course, will always take support, but if we can hit our numbers with students, then we should be able to say, hey, Church of Christ Alexandria, yeah, you don't feel obligated to do this anymore, you know, and so. Oh, and the other thing, and I will say this, and we'll end with this, You all have heard the story of the prodigal son, right? It's one of our favorite stories. I became concerned when we got our first students. And I noticed something, and because we come from our church tradition, almost all of our students are going to be white middle class. But we're trying to prepare them to live in a multicultural world. And we don't do that just for practicality's sake. We actually believe that as we intermix culturally with all the challenges it brings, all the problems it brings, it allows us to have a better understanding of who God is. And the way that we do this is we tell the story of the prodigal son. And when we teach it to Americans, I tell them the whole story. And I'll say, what was it that occurred in the prodigal son's life to where he decided, I need to go back home? And 97% of Americans say because he squandered his wealth on wild living. That's the number one American answer, 97%. It says right there, he squandered his wealth on wild living. They ask Africans from Mozambique that question. 93% had a totally different answer. They said because nobody would give him food to eat. And then they ask Russians, and 93% had a totally different answer. Because there was a famine in all the land. Who's right? All of them. He wasted his money. Here in the United States, we're very individualistic. You get what you deserve. You work, you can achieve anything. You need to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. That's our work ethic. That's what made us a leader in this world. Like we're gonna set a goal and we're gonna achieve it, right? In Africa, it takes a village. You know, before the AIDS epidemic, there were no need for orphanages in the continent of Africa. Because when there was an orphan, the village took care of that child. Then AIDS hit and demolished the African continent. And now you just have thousands of orphans. Because in the African way, they read that story and they're like, how is it possible that he was starving and nobody would give him food? And then if you know Russian history, millions of people dying because of famine. What does that tell you? We all read the Bible through our own cultural lenses. When I read the Bible, I'm not just reading the Bible. I'm reading the Bible through an American's eyes. And yet there's so much more there that I will never see unless an African comes and tells me, yeah, but there's more truth that you don't even see there. And a Russian comes and says, have you ever even seen this truth? And I'm blown away. And so one of the things I realized coming from our church is we're going to get white middle class kids. And I don't want that. I want African Americans. I want Latinos. I want Africans who are here in this country. I want them to be a part of this. We need them. Not just for practicality, because that's our world. No, to know God better, we need these perspectives. The problem is, if within the Latino community, they don't have the social network with the net worth. Like to tell them to raise $12,000, that's not going to happen. They just can't. 60% of all the money a Latino makes in this country, he sends back to his family. Same with Africans, most of your immigrants. Like they're building a life here, but they're sustaining their relatives abroad. So we started a diversity initiative. You can go on and say, I want to sponsor, be part of the diversity initiative. And so we have the Solomon Foundation gave us $12,000, $6,000 for 2 students, from that need it. And they don't have to be other colors. It can be a super poor white person too, socioeconomically. But what we've done is we've created opportunities for African American, Latino, other races who do not have the ability to do this. Another Christian travel agency gave us $6,000. We had a church give us $3,000, $6,000 to help with, hey, we know you need students. We believe it's important to give minorities a chance who would never have a chance to be a part of this. And so that is, you can go to that donate page and go down there and say, we want this to go to EnterMission staff, or we want to go for the diversity initiative. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing. And I want you to know, as painful as it was to see CCU close, and if you read the article in the Christian Standard on, man, we're not producing, our Bible colleges aren't getting students from churches, what's happening, how are we preparing our ministers? I'm telling you, there's a new way. Churches are adapting to find out how we can bless our communities. Churches are saying, we'll just train our own. I'm saying there are certain things that traditional churches will struggle with doing because that's not been in their wheelhouse. But it has been in missionaries' wheelhouses. And I believe we're seeing a new training thing for future leaders in our churches that'll come through some of these training programs. So it's missions wherever you are in the world, because the whole world is a mission field, and it's education, leadership formation. And we sell it as a gap year because young people aren't excited about discipleship or leadership necessarily. They do want to travel. That's our branding. They have no idea what's coming, but they're all transformed when they do it. So, all right, thanks so much. If you have questions, feel free to ask me. I'll close it out with a prayer. Thank you, God, for today. Thank you for this church. You've done so many mighty things because of this church and their giving. You have started churches in several different continents. The tendency may be to look at the huge churches, but there are churches all over this land who are doing the same thing, who are faithfully giving so that your kingdom can be established. And I'm so thankful for that. And I'm thankful for the ways that this church will continue to be used. And Lord, give us all a spirit of openness and willingness to learn new things. As our culture changes, we know you don't change. But man, the way we relate to culture has to change. And we need to be open, and we need wisdom more than anything else. Thank you for just what you've done in our lives, for the partnership now between EnterMission and this church. And God, may we bring glory to you through all that we do. Amen. Thanks, everybody. And if you want these packets, just come up. There's some packets here if you have people you would like to give the information to.